Hey, Chris with RC Worst here. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be showing you how to install a PURA UV water filtration system. And the installation methods that we kind of go through today are going to show you basically all of their systems are very similar, so we're going to be able to take this example and you'll be able to apply it to any size of system that you have. The only real difference is going to come when you select the location to install the filtration system, whether it be an under the sink model or a whole house system and so forth. So with that information aside, what we're going to do first is tear into the UV system. We've got the box right here. We'll go through, show you what equipment's in here, and then show you kind of how we want to lay it out and install it. So let's get started with checking out what we've got. What we've got today is a PURA UV BB3 system. So what that means is BB stands for the big boy filters, which is the larger diameter 4.5 inch diameter filter cartridges. We've got 3, so one of those is going to be the UV, and then we're going to have 2 steps of pre-filtration in this system. So the first thing that we're going to need to get installed is the first thing that comes out of the box, which this is going to be our UV system. It comes pre-mounted on a bracket, UV BB3. And these are relatively straightforward and easy to install, so I'm just going to pull this out of the box and set it aside. Alright, up next we've got our filter wrench and some mounting screws, as well as the instructions. So it's great to know you got instructions included with the packaging. We've got the PURA UV control module that's going to power the lamp, and then we've got our lamp and quartz sleeve. So that's everything that comes in the box. We'll show you how to install it. Alright, so like I mentioned, installation instructions as well as ownership instructions. It's going to cover your maintenance and installation procedures. Those are all in here, and this installation manual actually covers basically all of the UV systems that PURA offers, so make sure you consult that before you begin the installation. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the housings from the bracket, and that's going to make it a little bit easier when it comes to holding the bracket up here and figuring out where I'm going to mount it. Alright, so before I put the mounting bracket up and kind of show you what's going on there, just keep in mind when you're locating where to put your UV system, you want to make sure that you've got access to the water that you're trying to filter, of course. So in a typical whole house filter situation, which this particular model is rated for 15 gallons a minute, so it's completely reasonable for it to be used as a whole house system. So we're gonna, in this scenario, obviously we're in our shop, but we're gonna imagine that our water line is just right down here on the ground, and that we're gonna be cutting into it from there and going through the installation based on that information. So if it was an under the sink system, you know, obviously you'd want access to the plumbing and so forth that feeds water to the sink, or if you're trying to filter a specific portion of your system or something along those lines, you just want to, of course, install the housing where you've got access to water. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get this bracket up. So like I said, I took the filter housings off. One of the housings, the one that holds the light, actually has a flow sleeve that also comes with it, and I just pulled that out of place. So we'll use our level here, and we'll run that on our housing, or our bracket, and then we'll just kind of hold this guy up to the wall. Got to get a good hold on it. Okay, and then our goal here is just to get it level and in the position that we want to install it, and then mark our holes. And I'm just going to start with one, because once I get one screw in, then it's going to be easier, because then the screw can hold it up while I get the rest marked with the level. Alright, so I'll just pre-drill that first hole that I marked. Now the other thing that you want to keep in mind while you're positioning your bracket is you want to have ideally 20 inches of clearance for this particular unit, 20 inches of clearance above and below the unit, which makes for easier maintenance when it comes to changing your filters and replacing the lamp. So keep those in mind, and we've got plenty of clearance above and below where we've decided to install our filter. So now we'll get this first bolt mounted. So we've got the first screw in place. Now we'll go back to our level and our bracket. We'll position those, bring everything up here. And I didn't put that first screw all the way in, but now it's really easy for me to mark the rest. So we get it level exactly where we want it. And we take and mark all of our holes, and we'll pull this down, pre-drill those holes, and set this in place. Okay, so now I went ahead and got the last of the screws put in. I've tightened them down so our bracket is securely in place, and we're ready to get to assembling this guy. So before I go ahead and mess around with the filters or anything like that, let's talk about the plumbing coming into this unit. Okay, so what we've got for the plumbing coming into this unit, because the heads of the filter housings and the head of the housing that holds the UV system is plastic, I recommend transitioning from, because it's female threads coming out of these, so I recommend transitioning to a male plastic thread. So I've got some Schedule 80 PVC. I've got an 1.5 inch bushing because the outlet on these is 1.5 inches, and then we're reducing to 1.25 inches because that's the plumbing that we've got in our house situation. So I've got a bushing, I've got a nipple, and then I've got a union. And what that's going to allow us to do with this installed, now obviously if you were installing this in your home, you would want to apply Teflon tape where needed, but we're just going to dry fit all of this just for example's sake. Okay, so you can see up a little closer, we've got a bushing, a nipple to a union, and then we've got another sweat nipple here to a ball valve. So first let's talk about the union. What the union is going to allow you to do is quickly and easily disconnect the system should you need to remove it from the wall for any reason. If one of these housings became cracked or damaged and maybe you wanted to pull it off the wall to replace that, or whatever the situation might be, this union is going to come in handy for that. And at the same time, having a ball valve here is pretty valuable because then you can turn off the water supply to the system and easily service your filters, replace lamps, and everything in between. So we're going to use that type of setup on both sides of the system so that we can isolate it in either direction, as well as be able to easily disconnect the system anytime that we need to. With the plumbing and everything situated, now of course we're not making a plumbing video, so I'm not going to go through all the intricacies of soldering the piping and taping everything up. This is just for example's sake. But anyways, we've got the plumbing situated, and it is recommended with these systems that you actually plumb in a bypass line with a ball valve in the middle, so that what you can do, or at least a ball valve somewhere, so that you can shut that off when you're running the UV system. But if, let's say, a housing broke, maybe something fell against it and cracked the housing, or it froze in the winter, or whatever the case might be, it allows you to still have water in the home for flushing toilets, taking showers, and basically everything but drinking with that bypass in place. So it's highly recommended that you put a bypass in so that you can still have access to water even when the system's not functioning properly. So without further ado, let's talk about getting our filter housings on here. So first off, what we've got is the string filter. Now this UV system actually includes the filters. Not all of the versions that they sell include filters in case a person wants to select their own filters, but they do include with this system some preset filters. Now on the top of these housings we've got an O-ring, and I'm not sure if the camera is going to show it really well, but this O-ring has been pre-lubricated with a silicone-based lubrication, and what that lubrication is very critical to being able to, one, get the filter housing back off when you need to replace the filters, and two, it helps the O-ring to seat well, because if it's dry and you screw it on, the O-rings tend to grab and pinch, and it creates areas where water can leak from the system. So the O-ring can't really do its job unless it's well lubricated, and you're going to have a tough time getting it off. So make sure that you're using some sort of lubrication but avoid petroleum-based lubricants because they'll eat through that O-ring. So we'll get these installed. And they go in pretty easy. You just hold it up there and spin it on. Now when installing these filters, I know that the filter wrench is included, and it's an exciting new tool. You want to get on here and start working it, but that's actually used only for removing or loosening of the filters, and it should never be used for tightening the filters. The housing should always just be hand tight, and then when the system is pressurized, check for leaks, and if need be, you can try to tighten it just a little bit more, but usually that O-ring is going to hold up to hand tight, and you're not going to run into any problems. So on to the second housing. That first housing had a string filter in it. This second housing has a carbon block filter in it. So what the idea is here is we've got a pre-filter that's going to grab the sediment and the debris, and then a post filter which is going to polish the taste of the water as well as improve the odor if you've got any situation where that happens to be a problem. Now this filter is still in its packaging. I'm going to leave it that way, but if you're installing this in your home, make sure to take that packaging out because that's going to cause some problems. Alright, so we've got our second housing installed, hand tight, and we're ready to go. And I mentioned the flow sleeve. So basically this is a plastic tube that directs the flow of the water so that it has as much contact time as possible with the light. That way every bit of water that goes through the system is treated to the same degree and there's not any shortcuts, so to speak. And the way that this installs is just the way it comes out. It just pushes into place. Okay, so that's how that goes in there. Now there's two holes. There's one hole that goes straight through from here all the way down, and it on the bottom side it looks white, and then there's a black hole which is where the flow sleeve is installed. So that should be pretty straightforward because this hole that passes all the way through, this is where the UV lamp goes down through. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install the quartz sleeve. Now I'm going to throw on a pair of gloves, and the reason being is this quartz sleeve, you want to make sure that you don't leave any fingerprints on it, get any greases or oils from your skin on there. Basically you don't want to come in contact with it because that little bit of dirt or oil or grime is going to cover a part of the sleeve so that UV light cannot pass through it. So you want this thing as clean as possible at all times. Now this part of the process is the part that most people don't like because these quartz sleeves are very fragile and they can be broken very easily. So let's just kind of show you what this is all about here. So here's what the quartz sleeve looks like. It has this red tape on it. You leave that tape on there until you've installed the sleeve, because what that is it marks how deep the sleeve needs to be installed when you insert it. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is put a little bit of that silicone-based lubricant that I told you about. Now this is called Super Lube. It's available on rcworks.com if you needed to pick some up. So I'm just going to take some of this lube and I'm going to rub it around the top of the quartz sleeve here, taking care not to get any down in the sleeve because you just don't want it in there. Alright, and now from this angle you can see what I was talking about with the flow sleeve. So that gets inserted right into this hole, and the whole idea is that the water comes from this filter housing here, goes in through here, down through the flow sleeve, and then it has to travel all the way back up past the light in order to leave through the exit hole. So now we'll get back to installing our quartz sleeve. I've lubricated around the base of the sleeve, and we're going to insert it inside right here. And there's two sets of O-rings in here, so you want to be aware that those O-rings do occasionally need to be replaced or serviced if you find that you're getting a leak that's related to where this quartz sleeve is located. But the key to installing this is to hold it with two hands and hold it as straight as you can and give it a slight rotation, as you insert it. It's going to kind of click into place. And there we go. And there's going to be one more. There it is. So it's all the way up to the red tape. And at this point, we would remove that tape and carry on. Okay, so we've got the quartz sleeve installed. We're going to go ahead and clean it up before we install the housing. Even though we used gloves and didn't touch it, it's a great precaution. So I've put some rubbing alcohol, some isopropyl alcohol on a towel here, and I'll just give this a quick wipe down. And we'll wipe down the sleeve while we're here, making sure that everything is nice and pristine. Now with that in mind, we're ready to install the filter, or the UV housing. Now you can tell this one apart from the rest of them because this one has a stainless steel insert, and that helps the reflectiveness of the light as it bounces around inside this container to better treat the UV, or to offer better treatment. So taking care not to ding the sleeve on the way up, put this guy in place just like the rest of them. Now again, just hand tight on this one. All right, so now we're ready to install the light and the control module. So once again, in the controller box, there's a set of instructions on how to install this. I recommend consulting with the instructions before you do the installation. All right, so that's what that looks like. It's got 4 screw holes, and it comes with a packet of 4 screws. So that's easy to figure out where those go. And then this is what the pigtail that hooks to the actual lamp itself. So this just sits right on top of here. And then this little guy is where the lamp goes in. And it just bolts down just like that. So now that we've got that ready to install, we'll get the light out of the packaging and then we'll put the 2 in. Now normally, because these bulbs have to be replaced annually, in the future when you buy replacement bulbs, included in the packaging is going to be spare O-rings for like the quartz sleeve and things like that. So keep that in mind if those show up. Those don't necessarily have to be replaced every time, but they do provide them in case you need them, which is always nice. So the first thing that we'll do, we'll take our control module, making sure and taking care to treat the lamp just as we did the sleeve, not touching it. And even though I have gloves on, I try to only handle it on these white parts. So this just plugs in. It's a 4-prong plug, and it only goes in one way. Okay, so that's plugged in all the way there. And we take this guy and send him home. All right, now we're ready to use our little packet of screws. Keeping track of these little tiny screws is the hardest part of this whole thing. Okay, so we've got the control module mounted and in place, so all that's left to do is plug this baby in and open up our valves and let the water flow. You want to keep in mind that these UV systems are intended to operate on a dedicated circuit, so you're going to probably want your electrician or whomever to put a outlet nearby so that you've got an easy place to plug this thing into, and you don't want to run anything else on that outlet or on that breaker. And that's doubly important, one, for protection of you, because if you got a hair dryer or something else plugged into the outlet and then it trips the breaker, then your UV system's down and you may not know it right away because there's not any kind of alarm or alerting system that's going to tell you that your system's down. So just another reason to operate on a dedicated circuit. The last thing to keep in mind with these systems is if you're installing this on a house that already has had water flowing through the system, it may be a good idea to perform what's known as a superchlorination. So what that involves is pouring some chlorine, remove your filters, pour some chlorine, or at least remove your carbon filter because it'll suck up all that chlorine and get used up. Put some chlorine, maybe 1/4 to 3/4 of a cup in this housing. And then what you're going to want to do is run water through the system, and then go to go first to your farthest faucet, like a bathroom or kitchen, run water until you smell chlorine, and then go to the opposite side of the house, run water until you smell chlorine, and go around the house and flush the toilets, run the showers, everything until you get that chlorine smell. And then once everything in the house is very chlorinated, leave that overnight or for at least 4 hours. And what that chlorine is going to do is it's going to sit in the lines, and it's going to eliminate any bacteria or any microorganisms that are in the lines beyond the UV. Once that's done, go ahead and flush the system out, run all that water down the drain. If you do have a septic system, it's recommended you run the water outside, because that high concentration of chlorine can cause some damage to the bacteria in your septic system. So keep that in mind. And if you have any questions on any part of this, or keeping up your system or maintenance, we're going to be putting some videos together on how to maintain your system, how to replace lamps, and the whole kit and caboodle. So stay tuned if you want to check those videos out. Otherwise, you're always welcome to contact us at RC Worst. Our customer service guys are standing by. I'm always ready to answer the phone in any case. So thanks for joining us today. That was installing a PURA UV system. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.